You don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and it's a very sad day. Evil Geniuses made it to the finals of the LCS Lockin and lost 3-0. So that hurts. A good tournament overall, but they just couldn't get it done. Before we dive into that, let's talk about what happened in Korea last night. So Damwon Gaming beat T1 in the first game of the series, and then T1 won back-to-back games. They had a really good chance to win the first game as well. It was very close. Zeus had a pretty good game in game one. Went toe-to-toe with Birdall for the first two games, and then in game three, it was kind of a shit show. And then Hanwha Life against Sandbox. Hanwha Life won 2-0, which is pretty surprising to me. But the real reason why we're here is to talk about the LCS lock-in tournament. So let's take a look at the pick ban, because I think regardless of the result, anybody who bet on Evil Geniuses to win the lock-in tournament at 10-1 odds got great value for their money. I know a lot of people hedged out of their position, and that's a great way to secure some cash. So congrats to everybody who won on that. It would have been a lot more fun if they ended up winning the whole thing. But, you know, that's kind of what happens. My frustration with this loss is that they just didn't pick ban in an intelligent way. And I think that I forget where the comment I made was. But it's basically like Santorin and Bjergsen are probably going to be like a limiting factor for this team long term, because they are most likely not going to be able to compete with the upper echelon mid and jungles in the world when the pick ban is like even. I just genuinely don't think that the pick ban was even in this match, because that's really what people are going to say. Is if I just came out and said, you know, Evil Geniuses had a bad pick ban phase, there's no way that they... It's not that there's no way they could have won, but they just made the game so much more difficult for themselves with how they approached the draft. So let's do the pick bans. Pick bans in the finals. Man, so many advertisements. So they continuously banned out... Team Liquid banned out Senna, Jinx, and Diana in the first two games. They banned it in the third game as well. They banned it Corki in the third game and first picked Jinx overall. So the reason why this kind of stuff happens is because teams have different priorities for the Jinx Aphelios matchup. If you think that the Jinx is the better side because of the ranged advantage, then being able to first pick it on blue side is just going to be a very good start to the draft for you. So in the first two games we had Evil Geniuses first pick TF. I hate TF really as a champion. I understand why teams like to play around it and the fact that you get the pressure into the side lanes, but picking something like that so early just gives the opportunity for Bjergsen to basically get a free lane for the most part. And I just don't think that's how you're going to beat a Team Liquid team. Like if this was, you know, Evil Geniuses playing against Dignitas, CLG, Immortals, maybe TSM or C9, where the teams are either a little bit worse than them or, you know, more aggressive than they are, then the TF makes sense. But for Team Liquid, I think that we can just assume they're going to be a pretty measured team consistently, because they have a lot of veteran players that don't really need to embrace variance to win a game. That plus the fact that you were giving them the Aphelios side of the matchup. So by going Twisted Fate into Aphelios for Team Liquid and then picking Varus, like the only way that you're going to be able to snowball this advantage is if you're continuously diving bot lane, and we didn't really see much of that. So that was kind of frustrating. I think everybody who watches me knows that I'm not a big fan of Jin, not a big fan of TF. The Varus right here, maybe there's something on this patch that I just don't know about with the Varus. But they mentioned on cast as well that the on hit Varus just isn't going to get a lot of value based on the other champions that were in the game. So in game 1 and game 2, we had the first 5 picks, the first 6 picks and bans were the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and then we had a Poppy in the second game. So again, we're talking about a champion that is meant to counter the other team, but stylistically for their team, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, for the play styles that you really want to embrace. I think that we don't necessarily know how good Jojo Pion and Inspired are going to be as a unit, but since we don't, well, I guess it's easier for me to say than it is for the team to say, since the public doesn't understand what, or the outsiders don't understand what that combination looks like. The question that we have is, why are you taking potentially your best player and putting him on a champion that's not going to be able to do anything in the beginning part of the game and is not going to be able to hard carry the game later on? At least with the Viego, you could theoretically hard carry a game. With Poppy, you're never going to have the option to be the hard carry. And then in game 3, we have a Jarvan. So that's really what I'm kind of annoyed with, I think is the best way to say it. Like, I get it, you're not going to give away Diana to Inspired, but there have to be other champions that you can put Inspired onto where he can carry the game. I think that's a necessity when you're going up against a team like Team Liquid, where they're just not gonna int, right? Like, they're not going to continuously make aggressive plays unless they think they have legitimate advantages. And we did have a lot of clashes where Team Liquid just won the team fight because they were prepared to team fight even with champions that are better scaling as well. So like I know that in the first and second games, there were points where Aphelios was getting kills and stuff like that, and essentially getting ahead of the Varus. And then at that point, you're not really going to ever have a chance to get back into the game. So just kind of weird. Also, I think that it's a little surprising that we didn't see Corki at all in the first 2 games. That would have been probably the first level of thinking. So maybe there's something from scrims that they just don't like, or maybe they don't like Jojo Pion on... maybe they don't like Jojo Pion on Corki. Let's actually take a look at that real quick. I didn't realize that while the game was going on. Because they mentioned in the beginning of the draft, like, he's played a bunch of unique champions. So he has played the Corki. I don't know, just pretty weird decision making in the draft. I do want to look at that in the future though, because I do kind of want to compare Evil Geniuses to every team to kind of see what I think that they should be doing, which spots they have strengths in, which spots they're not going to have the advantage in, like a specific lane. Because I think if we go back to like the identity of Team Liquid, especially in like the finals, impact against Bwipo, I do think that Bwipo is the better player and is often going to have the better side of matchups, unless it gets drafted heavily in the other direction. So the fact that Impact played decently well in the first 2 games on Gwen was good. It was like a good thing. Like, it was a good result for Evil Geniuses. Then in the jungle, I think Inspired's just straight up better than Santorin. I don't even think it's really close. And then I think that Jojo Pion has a higher ceiling than Bjergsen does right now, but Bjergsen is a veteran. He's not going to be the reason why his team loses the finals altogether by playing hyper aggressive in lane without having additional resources or like his jungler coming. And there was one point in the second game, I think, where the jungle and support were hovering out around mid lane for like a minute or 2 trying to help him get it back, which is just smart. Like, it's just a smart way to play the game. And those are the kinds of things where maybe Team Liquid understands that a little bit better because of Bjergsen. But I really do think that the draft was a bigger problem than the execution of everything. Evil Geniuses probably had to play even more aggressive than they did in the first 2 games. They didn't really start snowballing, which is where I think they kind of needed this game to go for those 2 drafts to be successful. And then in game 3, we had the Volibear against the Renekton. So Renekton, impact on Renekton's good. You're never going to complain about that. But Bwipo was able to counter that. And it's not really a counter. It's like a soft counter where the laning phase he's going to be fine and going to probably be just as impactful, if not more impactful in the late game because he also has a targeted stun. Xin Zhao against J4, not a huge deal. But again, you're getting inspired on the... on a champion that's not going to have the same kind of carry upside. In the mid lane, we have Zillion, so like the classic Zillion from Bjergsen, and then Jojo Pyun pulling out another champion. It shows that obviously his champion pool is very diverse, and he's comfortable playing whatever in a high-pressure situation, but this is kind of where coaches need to step in and have a more clear direction for their draft and play something that's in my like I would probably go less variant because if you think that you're just if you think that Team Liquid's a better macro team than you are, then you probably do want to play the aggressive playstyle by drafting TF, but they didn't even play around that win condition, so that's pretty frustrating. And then in Game 3, the Jinx Aphelios swap. I think that Jinx probably has a winning record against Aphelios in general, and a lot of that has to do with the range advantage. And if you look at Evil Geniuses, they have a really tough time with a low range team composition. But I know it's just frustrating. I'm going to probably make a video sometime this week where I kind of compare Evil Geniuses to other top teams in the different regions and kind of give my explanation for where I would want them to go with the draft based on like the natural fit between the 2 teams. So once again, if we just look at it real quick, Bwipo against Impact, you don't really expect Impact to be able to dumpster Bwipo at any point, so it's going to be draft dependent, and you can probably just depend on it. It's going to be draft dependent, and you can probably predict that it's going to be an even lane where neither player completely gives away the game. In the jungle, if I'm Evil Geniuses, I want Inspired on something that's much more aggressive, has more of a playmaking ability. Yes, Jarvan can engage and can do some burst damage, but he's not the kind of true carry champion that I would want to see Inspired on. So actually, let's do that as well. I'm going to take a look at Inspired's champion pool from his career, and then Jojo Pyun against Bjergsen. Again, really not the spot that you want to attack because Bjergsen's going to play it pretty passive, I would think. So then that leaves you with, trying to attack the bot lane. Maybe attack Isla, since Isla's the rookie on the other team that doesn't have as much stage time. That probably should have been somewhere that they spent more attention, which they may have had the intention of doing that in games 1 and 2, but they didn't follow through on it in game. So it's either the draft was bad because the team didn't know how to play it, or the draft was bad because it didn't play to the natural win conditions of their team. And then in the bot lane, yeah, probably should have just attacked bot lane. I think that Danny and Vulcan should be beating Hans Sama and Vulcan, or Hans Sama and Isla, like consistently. So just get good matchups and you'll win. But let's take a look at this real quick. So 2021. Lilia, Udyr. I'm pretty sure Hecarim's back in the meta. Nidalee, Jarvan, Graves, you're not going to really play as much right now. Viego's still pretty good. Fiddlesticks would have been interesting to see come out. A lot of these champions just aren't really played right now. But like, there's a reason why we don't see much Poppy in here. And like, people think that Poppy's strong. Poppy's only good at stopping some of the things the other team is going to do. It's just a pretty bait pick. I guess that's it. So, I'm disappointed, obviously. I wish Evil Geniuses managed to pull it off so that everybody won a little bit more money. But I think this might actually end up being a good thing for Evil Geniuses because it'll potentially depress their futures line for the spring split, which I will definitely have interest in betting on. So that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.